Stop me if you've heard this before. I don't know how to jungle, can I please mid? Or, you don't want me in support, I'm the best player in this lobby. Or, ugh, solo is so boring, please someone trade me. Maybe you've said these things yourself. I know I have, but I eventually stopped after slamming Phil in Ranked Conquest for hundreds of games, which forced me to develop an appreciation for each role. Well, usually support. I've played every role from support to solo at a Masters or Grandmasters level probably hundreds of times each, and now I'm going to teach you all what I learned of the do's and don'ts for each role. The goal of this video is to give you some tips to get better at each role and to help you feel comfortable flexing outside of your comfort zone. Before we get into the do's and don'ts, I want to give some special thanks to the following people who have helped me perfect these tips. Thank you to former SCC support player and content creator Dashboard for helping me with support. Thank you to Grandmaster, Smite, Open Circuit, ADC player Clay City for helping me with ADC. Grandmaster, Smite, Open Circuit mid player XD001 for helping me with mid. Former SPL coach Blast for helping me with jungle. And former SCC solo laner and Smite content creator Snatty for helping me with solo lane. Alright, let's start with what is probably the most unpopular role, support. Do stick with your teammates. As a support, your job is to set up kills, tank objectives, and peel for your teammates. You pretty much always want to be with at least one other teammate unless you're invading camps, trying to steal an objective or something like that. And sticking with your teammates allows you to use your body, your character model that is, to block basic attacks and abilities from hitting your allies, or prevent enemies from moving altogether. Your body is one of your strongest protective assets as a support, so be sure to actively use it in fights. Don't overly split farm with your teammates. You should identify when you're not providing helpful impact in a lane and rotate away to let the laner solo farm so they don't fall behind. And try not to triple split if you can, especially the red buff and the speed buff on the solo side of the map. I almost never split those camps as support since the mid jungle typically get them together. The reason triple splitting is bad is because you're more than likely going to have something else to split and you're depriving your teammates of more XP in their carry roles, which can make them fall behind. Do try to duo split farm. Farming is most effective when you share the farm with one other player at least. You gain 120% the XP reward as a team when you split the farm of any minion or jungle camp. That's 60% per player when duo splitting and 40% when triple splitting. There's also a secret mechanic in Conquest where the lowest level player on each team gets 35% increased XP on their shared XP farm. Solo farm is not affected by this increase, so make sure you're splitting when you can. Don't just AFK your brain and go to mid after you get your first item. Oftentimes, staying in duo lane to get your ADC ahead and prevent them from being ganked will lead to gold furies or buff invades. But look at how things are going on the map. If you're losing the 2v2 in duo, maybe go to mid and look for a BDK or a beacon play early on. If you're just getting ganked a lot in duo and that's the only reason you're struggling, maybe sit over there to help protect your buff camps, contest neutral camps, or relieve some pressure on your ADC. Naturally, let's move on to the carry role. Do build items according to what targets you will be hitting the most often. If the enemy team has a lot of dive tanks, like Bacchus or King Arthur for example, chances are crit is not going to get them killed while they're in your face. Go penetration items, go Executioner, go Chinsai, go Titan's Bane, go Silver Branch if your character synergizes with that item, and don't go Dominance and Kins together, they don't synergize. Just prepare to DPS the tanks. Otherwise, maybe go crit to kill the carries if they're more likely to be your target. Don't ignore the wave. You will lose trades 9 out of 10 times if they have more minions than you alive. Focus on clearing the wave, then try to poke afterwards. Do both at the same time if you can, or only poke when you're not at risk of taking too much minion poke. Prioritize clear over poke or you will lose a lot of pressure. You and your enemy can also use minions to body block autos while you're trading damage, so play around that. Do work on using your relics effectively. This is the main quality that separates good players from great players. Using beads and Aegis at the best possible time will turn fights or force overcommitment from your enemy, allowing you and your team to capitalize. As the carry role, you will be focused by a lot of dive, as you will be the main vector for ending the game since you deal the most objective damage, so work on your relic usage. Don't tank the Fire Giant. The Fire Giant applies a 20% damage reduction debuff to whoever is tanking on top of a 40% healing reduction debuff. You'll want to give those debuffs to a tank so you can do full DPS to it. If your tanks drop the FG aggro, you'll have to make a decision, which more often than not is to leave the Fire Giant pit as well and either retreat or take the fight. Sometimes they'll drop it to zone enemies when it gets low, which is alright if you have good objectives secure on your team, in which case you may want to stay on it. Moving on to mid lane. Do expect to get blinked on at any time the first couple waves by the enemy jungle. As a mage, you are especially squishy in the early game after the 9.5 rollback. Don't feel bad about burning your beads to survive a blink engagement. Remember, if they use their relic on you, it's fine to trade your relic against them to survive and not miss waves or farm. Don't overly rotate. If you lose lane pressure and the enemy is able to rotate before you can, sometimes it's best to just call the rotation out and continue farming if you want to stay ahead. It depends on the situation. Like if your team is being invaded at their purple buff, it might be better for you to rotate to that than to help your team while they're trying to invade their camps. However, if you're piloting a character that can take fights early and be impactful, I'm thinking gods like Zhong Kui, Hebo, Chang'e, or Morgan Le Fay, it may be worth rotating. It's all about identifying your potential impact and what would benefit your team the most. Do stay grouped with your ADC late game. It is much easier for you to counteract dive if you position with your carry. You can help keep each other alive and deter dives altogether. Last thing you want is to get picked without getting any of your damage off. And just like the carry role, you need to be getting high value relic usage to turn fights. Learn how to use your relics well, and you will become a top tier player in no time. Don't play up and face tank abilities or autos. Play way further back on most mid laners, and throw abilities over walls when you can. Doing damage over walls is a mage's strongest asset. Kite around like you do in ADC, and try to poke as long as there's space created for you and you feel like you won't take too much return poke. But be mindful of enemies with blink. They will try to blink past the front line to get to you. Next is the jungle role. Do try to always know where the enemy jungler is. Not only does this help you make calls of incoming ganks, but it also helps you know when you can counter invade and steal camps. Stealing camps is an extremely effective way to snowball your lead, but it can be risky. If you know that the enemy jungler is in duo lane, for example, you can more safely look for an invade on their solo side back camps or red and blue buffs. Don't show yourself until you have to. The best junglers are the ones that don't walk over wards and wait patiently out of sight for the perfect opportunity to gank. Remember that showing yourself can open up opportunities on opposite sides of the map, so make sure it's worth your time and investment if you decide to gank or walk through mid lane in front of the enemy. Do prioritize farming over spam ganking. Every second a camp is up, that is unfarmed gold and XP. While you should almost never clear purple buff and seldom clear green buff, you should try your best to be at the other camps on cooldown. Farming camps faster means more camps will spawn over time, meaning more XP and gold as a whole. Over-ganking without a larger objective in mind, like destroying towers or jungle bosses, can lead to you being behind if you're neglecting farming your camps. Don't feel pressured to gank ungankable lanes. If your team has sold their lane and you feel the kill potential or actionable pressure is not really there, then try being active elsewhere unless you see a very good opportunity, like maybe the enemy is out of mana or they're chasing kills under tower, something like that. Maybe instead try to be at that lane's buff timers to help them secure their buffs from invades. At the same time though, if you fail a gank, don't let that deter you from trying again, as long as you understand where you went wrong and how to adjust if necessary. Last but not least is the solo lane role. Do think about how the lane matchup is going to play ahead of time. If the enemy is playing a character with cleave autos, chances are they will try to tag you with an ability or auto attack and walk towards your archers to group the minions. Play around that, avoid getting tagged, or do the same if your character can clear better that way. Bluestone is a good starter item to help you maintain minion aggro longer to group the minions. Don't take excessive minion poke. Clear minions as much as you can safely, but don't be afraid to let the front melee minions into tower and clear the archers before they take any hits from tower, which reduces their gold reward. It's perfectly okay to let minions into your tower a bit if it keeps you in lane longer so you can contest totem, neutrals, or even be at your blue on time. Do manage minion waves effectively. If the solo laner just backed and waves are clashing, but you know their TP is down, fast clear the wave, then go to neutrals. That way you're forcing wave under their tower. You rarely want to hit tier 1 tower in solo lane, as making minions crash under it is better for depriving farm and gives you more safety than having to push up past T1 to clear. You can also let the minion waves fight while you zone the enemy solo laner from clearing if you have enough pressure, which we call freezing wave. Then they should be forced to back, fight a probably bad fight, or call for a gank. Don't force your rotations. You are almost always doing the right thing if you stay in lane to farm. Rotating without getting anything out of it will put you behind, so watch the map, recognize whether or not you can make an impact, and identify if you have the tools available to get back to your lane quickly, like the teleporter or your teleport glyph relic. If those things are available to you, then you should feel more comfortable with making a rotation. Good rotations usually would be something like using the teleporter to punish a pushed up duo lane, then going to Gold Fury, or rotating to the beacon in mid lane if you feel it could yield a successful beacon capture. Thank you for watching, and I hope you found this video helpful. Do you have something Smite related that you may want some help with, which I can make a video about? Let me know in the comments below, I'd be happy to take any suggestions. Appreciate y'all's support as always, and remember to subscribe to the channel for more videos like this.